Despite her concerns, the new maid had already lit the fire, warming the frigid space. Sitting at her desk, she sorted the stack of letters, putting the one from her brother, Anthony, who was currently stationed overseas, aside to read later. He at least would have no idea what had befallen her, and was refreshingly concerned only about his prospects of a glittering career in the Prince of Wales' 10th Hussars, and how to achieve them on a somewhat limited budget. She broke the seal on a bill from her dressmaker in Hertford and perused it. She had sufficient funds to pay the amount out of her quarterly pin money, which she managed meticulously to avoid having to ask Robert for additional funds. Not that he wasn't already a generous provider. Unlike a lot of the gentry, he had derived the bulk of his fortune from the industrialized North, and that inheritance had only multiplied during the years of conflict and the current political turmoil. She studied the last letter in the pile. It bore no postmark, and had no signature scrawled across the corner to frank it. The paper was cheap, and the handwriting uneven. Lucy frowned as she opened the single sheet and attempted to read the laboured script. "You will die alone and childless. None of your heathenish spells will work. The Turners have cursed you forever." Lucy blinked and reread the single line. There was no signature. Who would send such a thing? And why? She fumbled for her handkerchief, afraid that someone would see her crying, and mortified at her own weakness. She'd come to consider the local healer, Grace Turner, a friend. Was it possible that behind her affable mask, Grace still blamed Lucy for what had happened in the past? Lucy forced herself to take a deep, steadying breath. "This ridiculous urge to cry at anything must stop," Lucy told herself out loud. "You are a very lucky woman who lives in a beautiful house with a man who—" She paused. "Who didn't even notice you'd left the breakfast table." But why should he? She'd done nothing but snap his head off every time he'd attempted to speak to her over the past few months. No wonder he'd retreated behind his newspaper.
"Your tea, my lady."
She hastily straightened and hid the letter under the pile. "Thank you, Foley."
"And the gig will be ready for you at 11, if that is convenient."
"That will be perfect." She kept her bright smile on her face until the butler had left, and consulted her daybook as to the tasks that awaited her. She would speak to Cook and Mrs. Cooper, the new housekeeper, then would trek upstairs to change into warmer outdoor garb. Sitting around moping was not her way, and there was plenty to do. Her twin brothers were due home from school at the end of the week, which was probably why her father was desperate to speak to her. Keeping them occupied and helping others would at least make her feel like a useful member of society.
"Sir Robert."
"What is it, Foley?" Major Sir Robert Kurland lowered his newspaper and stared at his elderly butler, who was regarding him with a distinct lack of approval.
"Do you wish me to start clearing the table?"
With a sigh, Robert folded his newspaper and looked around the breakfast room. "Where the devil is Lady Kurland?"
"She left the table about a quarter of an hour ago, sir."
Foley's accusing stare intensified.
"She barely ate a thing."
"What are you, her nurse? If she isn't hungry, she isn't hungry." Even as Robert said the words, he was aware that he might have erred. The fact that he hadn't noticed what was going on around him was remarkably remiss of him. "Did Lady Kurland ask you to speak to me about anything in particular?"
"No, sir, but I thought she looked a little tired. We're all so worried about her below stairs."
"I'm fairly certain the last thing my wife would want is to cause concern to anyone. She is simply intent on regaining her strength."
"By not eating, sir?"
Robert raised his head. "Foley, I have a great deal of respect for your opinion, but please do not suggest that I am unaware of the state of my wife's health."
"I would never presume to stand between a man and his wife, sir."
Foley raised his chin.
"But—"
Robert heaved himself upright and grabbed his cane. "Where is her ladyship?"
"She was in her sitting room, but I believe she has gone upstairs to change, Sir Robert."
"Thank you." Robert made his slow way upstairs. His mended bones were always stiffer in the morning, and especially in the cold of winter.